disclaimer, I guess I would be like, no pressure if you want to go. Like, I don't want to pressure you. And then eventually, I think, in my 30s, I started kind of like thinking, well, if I can't find somebody to go to these events with, like, why should I not go on my own to these events? And so I started eventually, like, if I couldn't, if I didn't have anybody to go with to something, I would go by myself. Was awkward at first sometimes because you just feel like self-conscious, like, are people watching me? Like, why is that person here by herself? Like, she looks sketchy, like, what's she up to? But after a while, I get used to it. And I think I really agree that you should be your own best company, because you spend the most time with yourself, every day. And if you can't enjoy your own company, like, how do you expect other people to enjoy your company? So, I'm not a big shopper, but I enjoy, like, browsing at Goodwill or consignment stores, things like that, and just hanging out on my own. And I think just being comfortable with myself to do those things. And I think this theme was a really good theme for me, just to be able to, like, reflect back on things, because I'm, like, in a real season of change and transition right now to just to be able to look back on, like, brave 15-year-old Bobbi, brave 15 or 17-year-old Bobbi, brave Bobbi in her 20s. And just to know that, as scary as things are right now, that I'm brave and that I'll get through this too, because I've done it before and I've got through things. So thank you, and thank you again to Jessie for everything.
Guys, keep it going for Bobbi. Woo. All right, guys, it's like rapid fire storytelling. No me in the middle, okay? Put your hands together for Andrea.
Can I lower this? Is that okay? That's okay. I'm fine. Okay, so when I was 9 years old, my 22-year-old sister told my family, my parents, that she was going to have a baby. She was pregnant with my oldest nephew. Now, at 9 years old, kids are intuitive, guys. I knew that there was some, like, level of disapproval and maybe even disappointment. But at the end of the day, my parents, they're really loving, supportive people, and so they supported her through her being pregnant and kind of having a rough time with her now ex-fiance. But anyway, their disappointment and disapproval was not a concern of mine. I didn't really care that they were giving off weird energy. For me, I did the math, did some calculations, and I realized I was going to be an auntie. And I was so thrilled. Now, I had a little brother, so I'm like the middle-ish child. So I had a little brother and two older sisters. And I gotta say, being an older sister was so overrated. I really begged for, like, a little brother. And then I got, here, all little kids do, right? They're like, oh, I want a little brother or sister. And then they get one and they're like, oh, it sucks. But I was so stoked to be an aunt. And so, fast forward X amount of months, whatever. And I'm 10 years old, and my nephew, this cute little baby with the little faux hawk, just a natural one. It's crazy. He's, like, brought into this world, and he's so precious. And his name is Reese. And as a kid, my sister was mostly a single mom, and so she worked a lot. And I got the privilege, honestly, I consider it that, of babysitting my nephew all the time, probably way too much, honestly. And so, in a way, I kind of feel like I almost got to raise him / be almost like a sister, because we're closer in age than my sister and I are. We're only 10 years apart, and my sister and I are like 13 years apart. And so I got what I like to call the full human experience. Like, I got to watch this little baby turn into this great person. Reese, he's now 14 years old. And as teenagers, they're all like angsty, and he wears like, like Mac DeMarco shirts and stuff, and he's like totally into like hipster things because I raised him, and and it just makes me like super proud. And of course, I feel what a lot of parents feel about their children as they age. I look back and I really miss the memories I have of him being a little kid. And I really cherish those. I have so many memories of us in my backyard playing baseball and play wrestling and letting him have an unplugged controller so he could think he was playing video games with me. And, just a lot of things. I remember like helping my parents feed him baby food and a lot of really precious, adorable things. But at the same time, I am very, very grateful, and in fact, I feel very empowered to see him changing into I feel weird, but like a man, like he's becoming a man, right? Like he's 14, and he's kind of in that in that phase in life where he thinks he's like becoming an adult, right? He's already stressed out about college and what he wants to do with his life, and I just think it's so funny, but so great that he's already so into it, and he always comes to me for advice, and he calls me and texts me, and whenever I go up to see him and my sister, he always tries to like pull me aside or ride with me in my car instead of my sister's car or whatever. And that those things are so meaningful. And a couple of months ago, I got to see him, and he was opening up to me about, his angst. And also he told me he's been feeling kind of depressed. He's had a lot of changes in his life. And I'm sure you all remember as a kid, a lot of those changes you have no say in. You just have to kind of accept whatever your parent chooses to do. You kind of got to go along with it. And so he moved, and now he has like a stepdad and all of these other things, and he had to change schools. And so he's had a really hard time like making friends, and he was opening up to me about his depression. And so and one thing that I realized is that teenagers love when you're honest back. So I was able to open up to him, and I told him a little bit about what I dealt with as a teenager, and even now, with depression and anxiety. And I opened up to him about me seeing a therapist recently, and he actually asked me to ask his mom if I could talk to his mom about setting up like a therapy appointment for him. And so I did, and he was just really grateful. And he texted me this a few weeks ago. Okay, I'm not a crier, but I honestly might cry when I read this because this was like really cool. But this 14-year-old angsty kid texted me, and he said, "Hey, thanks for listening today. It really meant something to me. You're the only adult I feel like I can talk to about my feelings, and your advice really helps me." How cute and insightful is that? So I hope that if you ever get a chance to work with the youths, that you do, because they're really cool, and they make you feel so good about yourself, and you're helping the world, someone's small little world, in your own unique way. So thank you very much.
Keep it going. Our next storyteller isn't just an incredible DJ. He's also an amazing storyteller. Please help me welcome Jeff.
Good evening. So, I'm sitting in a wheelchair in the parking lot of the hospital. My dad, who is 82 years old, it's actually his birthday today. He's 88. Holy crap. People get old, I guess. It's okay. My dad, who's 82, is wheeling me in a wheelchair, doing that shuffly old person walk, wheeling me towards the doors of the emergency room. It's Super Bowl Sunday, and this doesn't have anything to do with the Super Bowl because I've never watched one in its entirety. Shout out if you like football, it's cool. The reason why I'm in a wheelchair is because my legs stopped working. It was like someone had Frankensteined a dead person's legs onto my body, and they did a really shitty job like reattaching the nerves. Like they did not work at all. Like I couldn't even stand up. So I'm wheeled into the emergency room, and when something's really wrong with you at the emergency room, you get to go to the VIP section. If you have the flu, you go wait with the common people. Like, if you can't walk, VIP. So VIP for me. Anyone who's been in the emergency room, it takes forever, even on Super Bowl Sunday. Lots of people a lot of people drink during the Super Bowl, and there were a lot of cuts and banged heads, and I don't know, maybe their team wasn't doing well. I don't know. Lots of messed up people in there, and I was one of them. So they get to me, and I told them everything that was going on with me. It's like, hey, this thing has been going on. It's been progressing for 3 weeks. I can't walk anymore. What had happened, I didn't have any reflexes in my legs. When they do the little mallet test, it was like striking a piece of New York strip, just no response. And a couple of I don't know if they were nurse practitioners or orderlies, I don't know, hospital workers with uniforms who aren't doctors. A couple guys come in, they're like, okay, Jeff, or okay, Mr. Cardello, we want you to try standing. And I'm like, that is a really bad idea. They're like, no, it's okay. We're going to stand around you, and if you have any trouble, we're here. I hadn't planned that day on doing any sort of trust fall exercises. So I push myself up from the wheelchair, and I automatically topple over. There was no mistaking how screwed up my body was. It was like a knockout punch, and I collapsed into the arms of the orderly like he was like a prize fighter. So I get admitted to the hospital. I already knew what I had. I had Googled the symptoms. I'm like, hey, I have Guillain-Barré syndrome, which only 1 out of 500,000 people get. So, and also I have zero medical training. So no one believed me when I told them. They're like, let's do some tests. So they did a CAT scan. They did an MRI. They did a spinal tap, all which sucked. But I did end up having Guillain-Barré. I'm like, hey, you didn't have to do all those fancy tests because I know how to Google. But, I couldn't walk anymore. I started to get better. I had this... What happens in Guillain-Barré is it's an autoimmune syndrome where your body attacks itself. So the insulation on my nerves had been, completely shredded, so that electrical signal was just staticky. But I started doing physical therapy, and physical therapy begins with a physical therapist putting a belt around you. I don't know, you feel like a horse harnessed up to something, but they have a belt around you. And my first steps with the walker, I had this thing called drop foot, which is exactly what it sounds like. No heel to toe action, just Frankenstein feet all over the place. But I slowly started to get better. I actually snuck out on my own down the hallway with the walker. Didn't let the physical therapist know that. But I felt myself getting stronger. And, I was able to walk down that hallway. I got out of the hospital. I still have the walker. I didn't want anyone to see me with the walker, so I didn't go out in public. But I just cruised the streets around my parents' house. First, I was like, hey, if I can get to the end of my parents' driveway, I've accomplished something. If I can get down the end of the street, I've accomplished something. So finally, I was able to ditch the walker. I started using a cane, and I just started setting further and further goals. And when something like this happens to you, progress isn't measured in days or weeks, it's months. 6 months passes, no more cane. A year passes, I go on my first 8-mile bike ride. I'm 6 years out. This biking season, I went on a 60-mile bike ride, which, holy crap,